He delivered groceries every week, then found the photo beside her front door. She always left the porch light on, even in the middle of the day. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe if you love meaningful stories, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I really enjoy seeing where these stories travel. Liam didn't notice it at first. Delivering groceries wasn't supposed to be complicated. You pack the bags, drive the route, drop them off, and move on. He'd done it for almost 3 years now, and he liked the quiet of it. No office chatter, no meetings, just names on a screen and doorsteps that waited. Mrs. Elkins had been on his route for almost a year. Every Thursday at 3:30 p.m., like clockwork. A small, polite woman with gray curls and a pink sweater that she seemed to wear every time. She always had exact change for the tip, $2 and a smile. Liam never really thought about her beyond those few minutes at the door. That afternoon was warm, unusually so for early spring. The kind of heat that made the delivery van feel like a sauna every time he slid the door open. He glanced down at the receipt. Elkins, Oak Ridge Lane. 5 bags. He pulled up slowly, careful not to block her narrow driveway. The porch light was already on. He grabbed the bags and walked up to the door. Normally, she was waiting. Today, the door stayed shut. He knocked once, then again. A full minute passed before he heard the bolt unlock. The door creaked open just a little. There she was, but different. Her smile was there, but dimmer. Her voice, usually chipper, came out low and tired. "Sorry," she said, her hand shaking slightly on the edge of the door. "I was lying down." "No worries," Liam replied. "Would you like me to carry these inside for you?" She hesitated. It was barely noticeable, but Liam saw it. Then she nodded. "If you don't mind." He followed her into the small, neat house. The air smelled like lavender and something older. He stepped carefully, not wanting to disturb anything. She pointed to the kitchen. As he turned toward it, he passed a narrow entry table beside the front door. That's when he saw it. A photo in a brass frame. A woman, young, smiling, standing in front of a lake. Her hair was long and windblown, her arms crossed over a jean jacket. Liam didn't know why, but something about the photo made him stop. He paused just a second too long. Mrs. Elkins noticed. "That's my daughter," she said quickly, her voice firmer now. "Emily." Liam smiled politely. "She looks like she was really happy." "She was," she said, then turned toward the kitchen. "Before things got difficult." He didn't ask what that meant. He just placed the bags on the counter, gave a small wave, and told her to have a good day. Back in the van, he sat for a moment longer than usual. The photo was still in his mind. That face. He was sure he'd seen it before. Maybe on the internet. Maybe in the news. It felt like something unfinished. The next 3 stops blurred together. He couldn't stop thinking about it. At home, he tried to push it out of his mind. Made dinner, watched some TV, even opened a book. But the image of the girl in the photo stayed with him. It wasn't just her smile. It was something behind her eyes. Something that didn't match the easy pose. He sat at his computer later that night and typed the words almost without thinking. Missing girl, Emily Rhodes. Dozens of results came up. And then he saw it. The photo. The same one. Or almost. Same lake. Same smile. But in this one, she wasn't alone. A man stood beside her, cropped awkwardly out in the frame Mrs. Elkins had. Reported missing in 1998. No suspects. No confirmed sightings. He stared at the screen, the room silent around him. That porch light was always on, even in the middle of the day. The next Thursday, the air felt heavier somehow, like it already knew something he didn't. Liam pulled into the familiar driveway on Oak Ridge Lane right at 3:28 p.m. The same porch, the same hedges trimmed too neatly, and yes, the light was still on. Even with the sun high overhead, that small bulb glowed like it had a job to do. He turned off the engine and sat for a moment, gripping the steering wheel with both hands. He told himself it was just curiosity, that's all. A photo, a name, a face that rang a bell. It didn't mean anything. People looked alike all the time. But deep down, he wasn't convinced. Liam stepped out of the van, grabbed the paper bags, milk, bananas, some soup cans, and the usual loaf of rye bread, and walked up the path. His shoes crunched softly on the gravel. He noticed a small crack forming in one of the front steps. He'd never looked at that before. She answered the door quickly this time. No delay, no signs of fatigue like the week before. "Afternoon, Liam," she said cheerfully, opening the door wide, her pink sweater again. "Hi, Mrs. Elkins. Want me to set these inside again?" She gave a little nod. "If you don't mind, my knee's been giving me trouble." He stepped in, same scent as before, lavender and something faded. He knew the way now. Placed the bags on the counter in her kitchen, careful not to knock over the vase of artificial tulips that sat dead center. "Got everything you need here," he said lightly. She smiled. "You're always so reliable." He nodded, gave a half smile, and turned to go. But the photo was still there. Same frame, same spot beside the front door. And now that he knew the name, he couldn't look at it the same way. Emily Rhodes, missing since 1998. Liam glanced at it quickly, then looked away. He could feel Mrs. Elkins's presence just behind him. He made himself speak. "That picture, you said that was your daughter?" "Yes," she said, softly this time. "Emily." There was a pause. She didn't add anything else. "She looks familiar," he said carefully. "I think I might have seen her in something. A photo or a story, maybe." Mrs. Elkins didn't answer right away. She stepped past him, her hand brushing the edge of the table as she adjusted the frame. Barely a touch. "She was beautiful," she said. "Had that kind of presence that made people remember her." Liam stayed quiet, unsure whether to push or let it go. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "Did she—" "She's gone now," she interrupted. "That's all." Her tone wasn't unkind, but it had weight, a line drawn. He nodded. "All right. I'll see you next week then." He left without saying more, the sound of the door closing behind him unusually sharp. Back in the van, he sat for a long time before turning the key. She's gone now. What did that mean? Dead? Missing? Run away? He reached for his phone again and pulled up the same article he'd found last week. Emily Rhodes, 22 when she vanished. Last seen leaving her college campus after a late-night class. Her car was found abandoned near a wooded area 2 counties over. No note. No activity on her bank account since. No body. He kept scrolling. There were dozens of theories, some wild, some painfully grounded. Foul play, a runaway, even amnesia. But nowhere in the official reports did it mention a family. No parents quoted, no siblings. Just that she was known to be quiet and private. He dug deeper. No record of a woman named Elkins tied to the case. No interviews. No mentions. Just gone. If Mrs. Elkins really was her mother, she hadn't spoken publicly. Not once in 27 years. Liam sat there, heart beating a little faster than it should. Why keep a photo out like that for everyone to see, but never tell anyone what really happened? He looked back at the house. The porch light was still on. It wasn't just a photo anymore. It was a question that wouldn't leave him alone. By the time the next Thursday rolled around, Liam had already made up his mind. He wasn't going to ask anything. He'd told himself it was none of his business. He was a delivery guy, not a detective. People had their pasts, and maybe some things were meant to stay buried. But then he walked into her house again. It was the same as before. 5 paper bags crinkling in his arms, the low hum of his van cooling off behind him, and Mrs. Elkins waiting at the door with her pink sweater and that tired but polite smile. "Come in," she said before he could even ask. Inside, the air felt a little cooler this time. Maybe she'd turned the thermostat down. Or maybe it was just him. He placed the bags on the counter again, careful and quiet. She stood nearby, sorting through a list she'd written in perfect cursive on the back of an envelope. No mention of Emily. No mention of last week. And yet, the photo was still there. Same frame, same position, same smile. He told himself not to look, but of course he did. A glance that stretched into a second too long. "She was always smiling," Mrs. Elkins said behind him, her voice softer this time, "even when things weren't good." Liam turned slowly. She hadn't moved. "I've been thinking about that picture," he said, before he could stop himself. I remember seeing something about her. In the news, I think." Mrs. Elkins gave a small nod, then walked toward the entryway table. She reached down and lifted the frame gently into her hands. Her fingers lingered on the glass like she was brushing something away, even though it was already clean. "They stopped talking about her a long time ago," she said. "People forget." He swallowed hard. "I didn't mean to pry." She shook her head. "It's all right. You're curious. Most people are." She looked up at him now, and for the first time her eyes didn't just look tired. They looked guarded. "Her name was Emily," she said. "She was 22 when she disappeared. It was a long time ago." Liam waited, unsure whether she was going to say more. "She was supposed to come home that weekend," she added. "Hadn't been home in months. Said she missed the sound of the house. That's how she put it. 'I miss the sound of the house, Mom.'" She smiled faintly. "Funny thing to miss." "What happened?" he asked carefully. "She never made it," Mrs. Elkins said. "That's what happened." Another silence. It stretched between them like a rope neither one wanted to pull. "I looked everywhere I could," she said. "Called hospitals, filed reports. But by the time they started caring, she was already cold news." Liam nodded slowly. He didn't know what else to do. "I'm sorry," he said, and meant it. "She was a kind girl," Mrs. Elkins said, placing the photo back exactly where it had been. "Kind and private. She trusted the wrong person. That's all it takes." That last sentence stuck with him. He left a few minutes later, after politely declining tea. She seemed fine, more talkative than usual, but something about the conversation didn't sit right. As he drove away, he tried to shake the unease, but it sat in his chest, low and heavy. He got home that night and pulled up the missing persons site again. Emily Rhodes's case hadn't been updated in over a decade. No new leads, no further sightings. Just a vague note at the bottom. "Believed to have left the area voluntarily. Case remains open." He clicked away, frustrated. There was no mention of her mother. No mention of a house on Oak Ridge Lane. No sign that anyone had ever connected Mrs. Elkins to the girl in the picture. And yet there she was. Her photo sitting 5 feet from the door, like a secret that had never been hidden at all. He wasn't sleeping well anymore. Liam hadn't meant to let it follow him like this. At first, it was just a strange photo. Then a name. Now it was a full story circling in his head with no ending. He would lie in bed at night staring at the ceiling, thinking of that brass frame beside the front door, and the way Mrs. Elkins had said, "That's what happened." Like it was final. Like the story stopped there. But it didn't. He knew that now. On Sunday afternoon, with the rain tapping softly on his apartment window, Liam sat at his desk, laptop open. He told himself he'd just look for a few minutes. Nothing more. Just enough to clear his head. But hours passed. He scrolled through everything he could find. Old news clippings, archived forums, university records, amateur sleuth blogs. Most of it went in circles. Emily Rhodes had disappeared without warning, without her phone, without a note. The only physical clue had been her abandoned car, found 2 days later in a nature reserve 3 counties away. Keys still in the ignition. Her backpack on the passenger seat. No sign of struggle. That was the official story. But the deeper Liam looked, the stranger it became. There were inconsistencies. Different reports listed different clothing descriptions. Her roommate at the time said Emily had seemed calm but distracted the night before she vanished. A boyfriend was mentioned in one article but never identified. A neighbor recalled seeing her talking to an older woman in a car days before, but that lead had gone nowhere. None of them mentioned her mother. It didn't make sense. He searched public records next. Found Emily's birth certificate. Found a name listed as her mother, Mary Rhodes. Not Elkins. But people remarry. People change names. That didn't mean anything. Yet. He kept digging. Traced the name Mary Rhodes through property records. Nothing matched Oak Ridge Lane. He checked the county court filings. No adoption records. No guardianship. And then, almost buried in a records database, he found it. A marriage certificate from 2001. Mary Rhodes married a man named Thomas Elkins. The address listed? Oak Ridge Lane. That meant something. So she was Emily's mother. The timeline worked. Emily had vanished in '98. The marriage came 3 years later. That explained the name change. But it didn't explain the silence. Why hadn't Mrs. Elkins, Mary, ever been listed in the case? Why hadn't her name come up once? Liam sat back in his chair, hand rubbing at his eyes. He wasn't a reporter. He wasn't a cop. But he felt like he was holding pieces of a puzzle that someone else had thrown away. The next morning, he called in sick to work. Then he drove to the library in the town where Emily had gone to school. A small brick building with more dust than foot traffic. The librarian was kind, curious about his interest in old newspapers. He said he was doing research for a local history project. She showed him the microfilm machine and left him alone. For hours he scrolled through page after page of local headlines, missing persons reports, community fundraisers, police statements. And then something caught his eye. A photo, grainy, black and white, barely legible. It was a surveillance still taken from a gas station camera, dated the night Emily disappeared. It showed a young woman, blurry but recognizable, standing near a car. Beside her, a woman with curly hair in a familiar shape. He leaned closer. His heart thudded. He couldn't be sure. The image was terrible quality, but the resemblance was striking. He snapped a photo with his phone and stared at it for a long time. The angle, the posture, the profile. If that wasn't Mrs. Elkins, it was someone who looked just like her. He leaned back, staring at the machine as the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. There was no record of Mary Rhodes being questioned. No indication that police ever followed up on who that woman was in the frame. He thought about her words again. She trusted the wrong person. But what if Emily had come home that night? What if she trusted someone she already knew? Liam couldn't shake the feeling that the answers were closer than he thought. The following Thursday, he pulled up to Oak Ridge Lane with a mix of nerves and determination he hadn't expected. The porch light was on again, glowing steadily in the afternoon sun like a silent signal. He grabbed the bags and walked up to the door, the photo in his mind sharper than ever. Mrs. Elkins opened the door before he could knock, as usual, her smile polite but tired. "Hello, Liam," she said softly. "Hi, Mrs. Elkins," he replied. "I've been thinking about that photo." She nodded, stepping aside to let him in. Liam felt the familiar scent of lavender and old wood as he carried the groceries inside. He set the bags down carefully and took a breath. "I saw something yesterday," he said quietly. "An old photo. It looked like it was from a gas station, the night Emily disappeared." Mrs. Elkins paused, her hands folding tightly in front of her. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, voice low but steady. Liam swallowed hard. It showed a woman with curly hair standing next to her. "I thought it might be you." She looked away, eyes fixed on the floor. "That was a long time ago," she said finally. "Things were complicated." He didn't push. Instead, he sat down at the kitchen table. "Mrs. Elkins, do you mind if I ask something?" She nodded slowly. "Did Emily ever come back home? After she disappeared?" A long silence stretched between them. Then finally she looked up, tears glistening in her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "Once." Liam's heart pounded. "When?" "One night," she said. "She showed up at the door. She looked scared and tired. She didn't say much, just asked to stay for a little while." Mrs. Elkins wiped her eyes, her voice trembling. "I didn't ask questions. I didn't want to push her away. The next morning she was gone." Liam struggled to find words. "Did she tell you where she was? Why she left?" "She was afraid," Mrs. Elkins said. "Afraid of people who wanted to hurt her. She never said who." "Did you tell anyone?" "No," she said firmly. "I was afraid they would take her away again, so I kept it a secret." Liam leaned forward. "Have you ever stopped looking for her?" She shook her head. "Every day, Liam. Every day." For the first time, her walls felt like they were cracking. The quiet strength beneath her smile gave way to something raw and real. Liam wanted to reach out, to offer something beyond words. But all he could do was listen. When he left, the photo was still on the table, but now it felt less like a mystery and more like a memory waiting to be honored. As he drove away, Liam promised himself he would keep looking, not just as a delivery man, but as someone who believed that some stories deserved to be told. Liam's days began to blur together, each one filled with quiet questions that refused to be ignored. The photo of Emily Rhodes sat in his mind like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. He knew he couldn't leave it there, not after everything he'd learned. After his visit to Mrs. Elkins, he felt a new urgency. He wasn't just delivering groceries anymore. This was something bigger, something personal. One Saturday morning, Liam found himself back at the library. The air was cool and still, the smell of old paper wrapping around him like a faded memory. He settled at a table and opened a notebook he'd brought with him. He'd started jotting down everything he knew. Dates, names, fragments of conversations. Emily Rhodes vanished in 1998. Her mother's name was Mary Rhodes, who later became Mrs. Elkins. Emily had come back once, but only briefly. She was afraid, and she trusted the wrong person. He flipped through old newspapers on microfilm, eyes scanning lines of black and white text. There were reports of missing people from the same time, cases that never made it into the headlines. He read about cold leads and closed files, families left waiting. It was exhausting work, but Liam felt like he was inching closer to something. That's when he found a name that caught his attention. Daniel Carr. He was listed as a person of interest in a few local articles about unsolved disappearances around the time Emily vanished. No arrests, no charges, just whispers and speculation. Liam made a note to look into him more. Back at home, Liam searched online for Daniel Carr. The trail was thin, but it led him to a few social media profiles and old forum posts where people speculated about Carr's connection to various crimes. Some called him dangerous. Others said he'd moved away years ago, disappearing from public view. Liam's heart pounded as he read through the threads. There was talk about Carr being involved in the disappearance of several young women in the late 90s. Emily Rhodes was never mentioned by name, but the timeline matched. The same pattern, vanishing without a trace. It was the kind of story that would make headlines if anyone had proof, but nothing had ever stuck. Liam's mind raced. What did this mean for Mrs. Elkins? For Emily? And why hadn't anyone connected the dots before? He decided to visit the local police station the next day. Maybe he could find something there. Public reports, old files, something to help make sense of the pieces. At the station, Liam was met with polite skepticism. He explained his interest as a concerned citizen and former delivery driver, hoping for more than the usual runaround. To his surprise, an officer handed him a file labeled Cold Case, Emily Rhodes. The folder was thin, containing photocopied news clippings, witness statements, and a few grainy photos. Among them was the gas station still image Liam had seen before. He flipped through the papers, his stomach tightening. One report mentioned a woman matching Mrs. Elkins's description seen near the gas station that night. But there was no follow-up, no interviews. The case was marked inactive. Liam left the station with a mix of frustration and determination. The truth was buried, but it was still there, waiting to be uncovered. That evening, he called Mrs. Elkins. His voice was hesitant but firm. He told her what he'd found, about Daniel Carr, the cold case files, the gas station photo. She was silent for a long moment on the other end of the line. "I never told anyone because I was afraid," she finally said, voice trembling. "Afraid they wouldn't believe me. Afraid it would make everything worse." Liam promised her he would keep searching, keep asking questions. For Emily. For her. For the story that deserved to be told. And as he hung up, he looked again at the photo sitting on his desk. The young woman who had vanished so long ago, whose memory was still alive in the light beside a front door. Liam didn't know what would come next, but he knew one thing for certain. Some stories don't end quietly. They wait for someone to listen. That evening, Liam found himself driving slowly down Oak Ridge Lane again, the streetlights casting long shadows across the pavement. The sun had dipped low, and the familiar porch light beside Mrs. Elkins's door flickered softly in the early dusk. The photo of Emily Rhodes still weighed on him, more than ever. He wasn't sure what he expected when he rang the bell. Nervous, maybe. Hesitant. He'd already learned more than he should have about a family's grief and secrets. Yet, something urged him forward. The door opened, and Mrs. Elkins stood there, her eyes catching the fading light. She was wearing the same pink sweater Liam had seen before, but there was a quiet strength in her posture that hadn't been there earlier. "Liam," she said simply. "Mrs. Elkins, I hope I'm not intruding," he began. No, she said, stepping aside to let him in. I think it's time. Inside, the house smelled of lavender and old books. The living room was small but neat. A fire flickered in the hearth, and the brass photo frame sat on the mantelpiece. The photo caught the glow, its surface warm and bright. They sat down opposite each other, the air thick with unspoken thoughts. I want to tell you the full story, Mrs. Elkins said quietly. I haven't told many people. It's been too painful, but you deserve to know. Liam nodded, listening closely. Emily was a bright girl, full of dreams and laughter, but things changed in the years before she disappeared. She'd fallen in with the wrong crowd, made mistakes that scared her. Mrs. Elkins's voice trembled as she spoke, memories raw and heavy. There was a man, she said, someone I trusted at first, someone I thought could help her, but he was dangerous. She paused, swallowing hard. He hurt her, Mrs. Elkins whispered, not just physically, but in ways that left scars no one could see. Emily had run away, hoping to escape him, but the danger followed. That night she disappeared. She'd come back briefly, hoping for safety, but it was never enough. Liam felt his chest tighten. The weight of her words settled deep inside him. I kept that photo on the table, she said, eyes fixed on the frame, to remind me she was real, that she was my daughter, that she deserved to be remembered. He wanted to reach out, to say something to ease her pain, but the silence between them felt sacred. Have you ever thought she might still be out there? Liam asked gently. Mrs. Elkins looked up, tears shimmering. Every single day, she said. I don't know where she is, or if she's safe, but I hold on to hope. Liam's mind raced with the pieces he'd gathered, the cold cases, the names, the missing leads. He wondered if there was still a chance to find answers, to bring peace. Mrs. Elkins, he said carefully, I want to help. I want to look for her, not for the police, but for you, for Emily. She smiled, a fragile but genuine smile. Thank you, Liam, she said softly. It means more than you know. They sat together for a while longer, the fire crackling between them. Outside, the porch light glowed steadily, a beacon in the growing darkness. As Liam left that night, he carried with him more than groceries or quiet conversations. He carried a promise to listen, to search, and to remember. Because some stories don't end when the front door closes. Sometimes they're just beginning. The house on Oak Ridge Lane felt different that evening. Liam stepped inside, the familiar scent of lavender and old wood wrapping around him like a fragile memory. Mrs. Elkins sat at the kitchen table, her hands folded in front of her. The brass photo frame stood on the windowsill, catching the last rays of daylight. She looked at him with a quiet determination that hadn't been there before. I want to tell you something I've never said aloud, she began, her voice steady but soft. Something I buried deep for years. Liam nodded, encouraging her without words. It was the night Emily came back, she said. She didn't want to stay long. Said she was scared of being found. But she needed to see me. Just once. Mrs. Elkins paused, gathering strength. She told me about the things she couldn't say before. The fear, the people who wanted to control her, the mistakes she made trying to survive. Her eyes filled with tears. I promised her I wouldn't give up, she whispered, that I'd keep her safe, even if it was only in my heart. Liam felt the weight of her words settle between them. Did she tell you where she was going? He asked gently. No, she replied. She said she needed to disappear again, but she left me something. Mrs. Elkins reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, folded note, yellowed with age and carefully preserved. Liam unfolded it slowly. The handwriting was shaky but clear. "I'm sorry I couldn't stay. I love you, Mom. I'm trying to be free." He looked up, eyes meeting hers. "Have you ever tried to find out where she went?" he asked. She shook her head. "I was afraid. Afraid of what I might find. Or not find. Afraid it would break me." Liam understood that fear. It was the kind that kept you frozen, caught between hope and heartbreak. "But you don't have to be afraid anymore," he said quietly. "Not alone." Mrs. Elkins smiled weakly, a flicker of relief passing over her face. "I want to believe that," she said. "I want to hold on to hope." For days after that visit, Liam couldn't stop thinking about the note. The words were a window into a life lived in shadows and silence. Emily's love and fear tangled in each line. He reached out to a local private investigator, someone recommended by a friend, and shared what he knew. The investigator listened carefully and promised to look into the cold case with fresh eyes. Meanwhile, Liam continued his deliveries, but his mind was elsewhere. Each knock on a door, each smile he saw, reminded him of the fragile connections people carry. One afternoon, as he parked near Oak Ridge Lane, he noticed a small package left by Mrs. Elkins's door. It was wrapped in brown paper, tied with string. Curious, Liam picked it up and carried it inside. Mrs. Elkins watched him with a faint smile. "I thought you might want this," she said. Inside the package was a worn journal, its leather cover cracked and faded. "This was Emily's," Mrs. Elkins explained. "She kept it hidden. I never read it. I was afraid of what I might find." Liam opened the journal carefully, turning the pages filled with neat handwriting and sketches. It was a map of Emily's thoughts, her hopes, fears, dreams, and the shadows that chased her. Reading the journal, Liam felt closer to Emily than ever before. It was as if she was speaking to him through the years, asking to be understood, to be found. The days stretched on, and with each page, Liam's resolve grew stronger. He wasn't just delivering groceries anymore. He was carrying a promise to a mother, to a daughter, to a story waiting to be told. And as the porch light on Oak Ridge Lane continued to glow, Liam knew he was not alone in wanting answers. The porch light was still glowing when Liam pulled up to Oak Ridge Lane the following Thursday. It had become a quiet signal for him, a reminder that some stories, no matter how painful, still needed to be honored. He carried the worn journal carefully as he walked up the path. The air was cool, the evening calm, and the soft hum of the streetlights filled the silence between his steps. Mrs. Elkins greeted him at the door, her eyes warm but tired. She wore a shawl over her pink sweater, and for a moment they stood there quietly, two people connected by a story neither could forget. "Come in," she said softly. Inside, the house was filled with the familiar scents of lavender and aged wood. The fire in the hearth cast flickering shadows across the walls. The brass photo frame stood on the mantelpiece, catching the light like a beacon. They settled at the kitchen table, the journal lying open between them. Liam watched as Mrs. Elkins traced her finger over Emily's handwriting, her voice catching with emotion. "She was so full of life," she said, "even when things got dark." They talked for hours, about Emily's dreams, her fears, the mistakes she made trying to find freedom, about the nights she was brave enough to come home, even if only for a moment. Liam shared what he'd learned, the cold case files, the leads about Daniel Carr, the gaps in the investigation. Mrs. Elkins listened, her face etched with sorrow and hope. I never stopped believing someone would find her, she said. And now, maybe they will. The weeks that followed were a blend of quiet determination and fragile hope. Liam kept delivering groceries, but every visit was different. There were conversations that went beyond the usual exchanges, moments where silence spoke louder than words. Together, they reached out to the investigator Liam had contacted. The woman was thorough and compassionate, reopening old files, chasing down new leads, and connecting dots no one had bothered to connect before. One day, Liam received a call from her. She had found something. A new witness who remembered seeing a car near the nature reserve the night Emily disappeared. Someone who recognized the man in the gas station photo. It wasn't the end, but it was a start. Back at Oak Ridge Lane, Mrs. Elkins clutched the journal to her chest. "Thank you," she said quietly to Liam. He smiled, feeling the weight of the journey they'd shared. "Emily's story deserves to be told," he said, "and you deserve to have her remembered." As he left that evening, the porch light flickered softly behind him. It wasn't just a light anymore. It was a promise. A promise that some stories, no matter how long they wait, will find their way home. And that sometimes, all it takes is one person willing to listen. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy meaningful stories like this, we'd love to have you as a subscriber.